Hello and welcome to Trapped Emotions Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew.
I'm your host, Tyler.
And today we're going to get a little bit into understanding our perception on things and the different perspectives we can have, which can actually alter our reality. And, Tyler and I were talking earlier, we were talking about how in the past, I would always have a different perspective on how I thought a situation was, and I would always take my perspective as fact. And so it
Mm.
made it hard for me to try to understand other people's perspective and really look at a situation as a whole. And also, I would get to a point where I would look at the negative in a situation and it would be hard for me to find the positive perspective. Because no matter how we look at it, I mean, there's always a positive that comes out of every situation. And so, back when I was still in my mess and everything was negative, it just seemed like everything that happened to me was something that was against me. Someone would say something to me and it was because they were trying to harm me, they thought ill of me or, and it was just I always had a negative spin on everything that happened in my life. And then, when I started to understand myself, when I started to get my life together, I realized that every negative situation that was in front of me was all because of my perspective that I had on it. So today I've tried to understand how certain things that happen in my life all have a positive perspective if I can look at them that way. And it's just like, us trying to understand what direction the universe is pushing us in. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at with that. We could talk about that.
I mean, my perspective right now is this incense you're burning is crazy with all this smoke, right? But now something you had said though was about like you had just said about like you were taking your perspective as facts, your perception as facts, right? And that always reminds me that like feelings are not real. Like just because I feel something doesn't mean that it's a fact, right? And that's usually where like my perception comes in is given a place, a situation, a person, any argument that I've ever been in life has because I have felt some kind of feeling and believe that feeling to be a thing, right? And I always say like I'm one of those people, and this is probably because like at the end of the day I'm a drug addict, but I'm one of those people that I turn a little tiny molehill into a mountain, right? And it's because of that. It's because like I'll see a situation and I go right to the negative because like you had said, like I'm so used to situations being negative or turning into a negative problem that I just go boom, 0 to 100 right to the worst case scenario. Because it's easier,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because perception's like a choice, right? In a sense, like I like we can both see a situation and have a different perception on it because like your perception, like you hate negative things around, right? Because you're like, man, like some anything that's negative is around me is gonna turn like I'm gonna have this negative feeling. Me, on the other hand, my perception is like I find the beauty in the negative. Like I find the beauty in pain, right? So like my perception is like I can turn the most painful situation into a beautiful learning lesson situation. And like I think that's where like the perception is. You know what I mean? But man, an active drug addiction perception was everything, right? Like every argument, everything that I've ever been in was, man, it's is the way I see things. I see things messed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And, like I've been in certain situations in my life where when I would have a negative interaction with someone, I would always think that it was something personal against me. But really,
Mm.
I'm not looking into the deep realization that possibly the way that they reacted to me had nothing to do with what I said to them or what I did. It, but I can get to that point where my, you know, perception on the situation is that, oh, this is a personal attack against me. But what I've tried to do, in recent years is I try to understand people and where they're coming from and
Right.
realize that a lot of the time their reaction to me has nothing to do with me personally. It's something that's going on inside of them that they may need to work on. And And to me, that helps me try to understand people and realize that no matter how I may see them or a situation initially, that doesn't mean that the way I view it is the way it really is. And that helps me to be open to other people's perspective on things and not gain resentments against people for things that possibly have nothing to do with me.
I agree. No, man, like as you were talking, it just kind of clicked. Like, because like earlier in the day, like I was making little trailers and I made one about fear. Like fear is a liar, right?
Hmm.
Fear is everything to do with perception, right?
Yeah.
I know the smoke is crazy, right? That you got from this incense. It smells good though. But like fear is that perception, right? So like the way that like guilt, shame, like I feel like I might feel shame over a situation, but it's my perception of that situation, right? Like I feel like it shouldn't have happened this way, and this is why I say like feelings aren't fact, right? Like facts are facts, feelings are. This is how I feel right now. I might not be wrong for how I feel because you're never wrong for how you feel, but my perception could be off. So like when you're saying about like people, like I get angry at people sometimes, and you're better at this than me, where like I need to step back and say, man, this ain't personal. Like you're not coming at me personally, right? Because I do that. Like I take on a lot of things at one time, and I have ADHD, so like I'm in like 30 different thoughts at once, right? So like a lot of times like I'll hear certain things and I'll take it the wrong way because like my perception is like, damn, is that a personal attack? And I guess I get frustrated a lot too because like I'm trying to like convey it the way that I think with ADHD. Like I try to convey the way that I think. So like I'm in 20 different spots trying to get to one point, and like that's where the perception lies. You know what I mean? And like I mean, fear alone is that perception of like, man, like earlier episodes, I talked about abandonment, right? That's perception, right? Like I felt like that, but it doesn't mean that it was real, right? Because like I still have people there, and like it's about, and I like, and I want you to explain this better to them because I like how like when we talk about perception, it's how do I get out of it? How do I get out of that negative mindset? Because we get stuck into that negative thinking of like, oh man, like the worst case scenario. And I call it survival mode. And so does most people. Like, cause man, it was negative, right? Like the beginning of life was negative. So like we get stuck in that survival mode, and then you add on life and everything stuck in survival mode. And it's like, damn, like how do I get out of it? Right. And you have a good perception on that. So like, what's your thing?
I mean, the best thing I do is I just try to sit back and I try to rethink every situation, like um and just like you said, like our feelings aren't necessarily facts. The way that we feel about a situation initially isn't always right. And I know for me personally, most of the times it's not right at all, you know? And it's just
Yeah.
that initial emotional feeling of how I'm reacting internally to a situation. And most of the time that's my ego saying, why are you saying this to me? Why would you talk to me like that? What did I do? And it's
Mm.
my ego taking it personal. But then when I can sit back and try to understand the situation better and try to look at it like, okay, I walked into this situation. I feel I did nothing to provoke it. They reacted to me out of something else that had nothing to do with me. So, what is me being upset and being negative or confrontational towards them going to gain? And that's one thing I realized, that no matter how someone treats me, it's none of my business. Number one.
Amen to that.
Number two, it isn't a reflection of who I am as a person, because the
Mm.
only thing that I can control are my emotions and actions. You know, so if I can keep my actions to a point where I don't react to someone else's negativity and I can throw some positivity into the situation, usually I can turn the whole thing around into a point where they may actually apologize to me, which has happened in the past. And I think I've said this before in one of the episodes. I know you and I have talked about it. Just like, with my job, I deliver and I have to deal with managers, store managers sometimes. And they're not always in the best mood. And one thing I've tried to understand is they're under a lot of pressure. They're under a lot of stress. And I remember one time in particular, I came in and it was this lady and she's given us all to deliver their, issues. And, she was very demeaning to me. And, I kind of got a little upset with her and I just kind of said, hey, please don't talk to me like that. I'm trying to work with you here to get us checked in and get us through, this process. And so we finished. I was putting away the product and everything. And then by the time I was done, I sat back and I realized, like, Andrew, this had nothing to do with you. You have to react in a positive manner. And so, there I am feeling guilty because I was kind of, upfront and confrontational with her, saying, hey, don't do that. I let my ego kick in and handle the situation when I shouldn't have. So when I was walking out, I finished and I'm walking out and I'm like, hey, hope you have a good day. Thank you. And I smiled. And she's like, oh, thanks. You too. Every other time that I've been into that store since then, she has been like, "Oh, hi Andrew, how you going?" She remembers my name. She's always happy. And when I bought this house, she kept asking me, "So how's the process going?" And like we're best friends, whenever I'm in that store, we're best friends. And that one decision to turn a negative situation into a positive has changed our whole relationship. And now it's all love when we see each other. So that really tells me that I can control, you know, whether a situation is positive or negative. And it helps me to be able to not get resentful and upset and irritated with situations that I have little to do with, I have little control over.
I mean, I I like that. I think for me, like changing the perspective, like the perception, I have to be uncomfortable. Is really what it boils down to, right? Like, the other day, and I've been ranting and raving to everybody about this, but like the other day, like you've been on me about like doing this sound bath thing, right? I thought it was nonsense, right? I'm like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna lay down.
Why don't you explain real quick what a
I'm
sound
gonna,
bath is?
I'm
Okay,
gonna,
okay.
and so I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, like I'm talking to you and I'm like, okay, this sounds great. What is this? Oh, you're gonna lay there and they're gonna, hit these bowls and it's gonna create this sound wave and it's gonna be relaxing. And I'm sitting there in my mind like, this is some bullshit, right? I mean, I'm just like, it's some straight bullshit. Makes no sense whatsoever. You know what I mean? But like, I was like, all right, like I'm gonna do it anyway, right? I'm like, I'm gonna do it anyway. The greatest thing I ever did, right? And that changed my perception on things. Is like because I had to get uncomfortable with it to be able to say like this is stupid, this is bullshit, but like I'm gonna do it anyway just to prove that it's bullshit, right? But then like I did it and I'm like, damn, I gotta go do it again because like I was so peaceful, so at relaxed, and even since then, bro, like I'm just in a better place. Like ever since then, like because I did two of them, because I'm an addict, right? And I can't do one. But I did two of them and like, I want to do more actually, but it put me in a better space and like mentally like I'm a lot better today. And like even like on the inside like I'm just cool. You know what I mean? Like I'm just good where I'm at. And like a lot of it was because of that. Like I experienced some crazy stuff while we were doing it and like it just kind of like changed my perception. So like for me, it's all about like I got to be uncomfortable, and that goes back to even like when I got sober, right? Because I remember the first time fresh in rehab, right? I'm in rehab, right? I went to my first like recovery meeting, right? I thought they were all a cult. I was like, these people are a cult. It's some bullshit. They saying little prayers and stuff. They doing goofy shit. But like I had noticed, like everybody was laughing, right? And like where I in an active addiction, like I wasn't laughing. Shit wasn't funny anymore. right? So I was like, all these people are laughing and joking, like maybe I'll go back again, right? And I was like, hey, it's stupid, but like I went back again, and like it changed my life because like I had to change that perception of like, man, this isn't bad. Like this is good. I need positive people. I need a support group. I need this thing because obviously I don't know how to like fix myself by myself. Like I need people to help me fix because at the end of the day, like I have a lot of character defects. We all do. But like left to my own devices, I'm looking in the mirror like I'm great. I got no character defects. I'm good, right? Because of that ego. But like I need to go to this recovery stuff and like understand that like no, I'm very flawed. I have lots of character defects and shortcomings, and the only way to work on them is to identify them, which is why I need positive support people in my life who's able to say, "Bro, you acting out on ego. Bro, you should check yourself." And that's how I change my perception because like what you were saying, when somebody calls me out, that's what makes me change, right? So like you did to that girl at the store, boy, that changes the conversation quick, right? Because if somebody says to me like, "Bro, why are you talking to me like that?" Like instantly, I'm like, "Yeah, why am I talking to you like that?" Like I gotta look at this real quick. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's just for me though.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, for me, man, just understanding that everything that happens in my life is happening for me instead of happening to me changes my whole perspective on every single situation. I
Mm,
look at everything that happens in my life, whether it be positive or negative at the time, whether it evokes, negative emotions or positive emotions, it doesn't matter. It's happening for me. And I have to remember that. There is always a positive that comes out of any situation. And so that really helps me to understand you know, to understand the different perspective on it. And the fact that when I'm saying that these things are happening to me, really it's just my ego just trying to take it personal and make it about me. Everything that happened used to happen in my life was something that happened to me. But today, like,
mm,
like we'll talk about a breakup, like how many of us have been broken up with, and we sit there and we have that self-pity, and we're just like, oh, why did they do this to me? What did I do wrong? I, and it's always about me. When I start questioning, why did someone do that to me? But I can put a different perspective on it by sitting back and say, okay, universe, what are you trying to show me? Because I believe in the universal law of attraction, in the fact that if it's meant for me, it will be there and it will stay there in my life. But if it's not meant for me, somehow it will leave. And I have to understand that when people leave my life, or when I go through a breakup, when I feel the need that I have to break up with someone, or if someone breaks up with me, that it's something happening for me. I have to look at the bigger picture. What direction is this pushing me in? Where am I being led? What else is coming for me next that could be better than this situation that I just left? And it helps me to not be mad and resentful against about things that happened to me. And we'll go with what I was trying to talk about earlier. The whole, when they decided, a few years ago that they were gonna shut down the job that I was working at. You know, we all were in a panic. This is the job that I thought I was gonna retire at. This is where my family was. This is a job that I love to do. I love going into work so much. I work doubles. I live there most of the time.
yeah, you did.
And that initial shock of, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I remember that dread. But those initial emotions weren't really the facts of what was happening or what the universe was trying to put in my path. Because I had to sit back and say, okay, Andrew, this is what's happening. It's not happening to you, but what can you do about it? What can you do to change the situation, to make it better, to
Mm,
make it more positive? So, I had a friend that was working at this very prominent company, And he told me about how much he liked it, and the fact that they made good money, and it would be something that could help me pay the bills. And so he told me how to get it, and I went and went through the process and ended up getting hired there 2 months later. And initially, as soon as I got hired, I was already making $5 more an hour than I was at the other job. And I got to be home with my daughter more because I didn't have to work all those doubles
Mm.
just to maintain financial stability, you know. And now in hindsight, 3.5 years later, it was one of the best things that could have happened to me. You know, it was the universe pushing me in a direction that I needed to go, that I didn't know that I needed to go in. That me personally wouldn't have went forward with if I had to do it on my own devices. So I have to look back at that and realize that everything is happening for me, no matter how personal I may take it in the beginning. And here we are, and I have a good life. I bought a house since then. I'm home with my daughter more. I love my new job. I'm able to move up in the company. So just by changing my perspective and going from where the old me would have been with in a self-pity perspective, like, oh, why does this happen to me? Everything's gonna go to shit. Now what am I gonna do? My life's over. My career's over. Oh, like, Andrew, we do it next? What are we doing to remedy the situation? What is this trying to show me? And by changing my perception and understanding that at that point I had to take action to, be where I needed to be, made a whole difference. And, it's just little things like that that are proof to me over these years that just because something may rub me negatively in the beginning doesn't mean that it's a negative situation.
Like that. I think for me, I'm polar opposite of you,
Yeah, we know that.
right? Like polar opposite. And like for me, um, that's not really where my perception lies, right? Because like I guess everything is situational. I mean, everything in life is situational, right? But like, like you talk about a breakup and like, I've experienced that before. And for me, it was like, yeah, what did I do? Right? Because I have to look at my side of the street, right? So for me, it's like I got to look at my side of the street and see, like, I got to go through the footwork to say, okay, I was in a relationship. Where did I go wrong so that if I end up in a relationship again, I don't go wrong in the same place, right? Because otherwise, I'll carry that shit with me, right? So like for me, like I always got to look at that. Like I've been fired from a job before, and I'm like, damn, like why did I get fired, right? And it was okay. I got to put myself in other people's shoes, right? Because like you were talking about, looking at other people's perception. And I have to put myself in other people's shoes and be able to say, like, oh, well, if I'm in their shoes, I would do the same thing because of this situation, right? But it wasn't because of that, right? It was because, oh, excuse me. It was because of like, oh man, like, I got fired from the job because like I kept coming in late. I'm on a 90-day period and I'm just late every day, right? I'm not really doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, why would they want me to continue to work there? I'm not showing good stuff, right? I'm only showing like these negative attributes of myself. The same way in a relationship. I remember, like one relationship in particular, like it had ended, and I'm like, damn, like what did I do? You know what I mean? Because like, we've talked about it before, like where, like I had to look at like damn, like this girl cheated on me, but why? Like, what was I doing that caused this? Because sometimes like I don't like sometimes people just do wrong to us, and like yeah, like I didn't cause anything for that because for every action there's a reaction, right? So I have to look at that. And like, what did I do? And like when I backtrack that and I look at that situation, I'm like, oh shit, like I can see where I went wrong. Okay, so in the next relationship, I have to be more communicative. I need to talk more. I need to like get emotional, which I suck at. Like I haven't been vulnerable until we started this, right? So like what is this? Episode 7 or some shit?
Hmm.
So like I haven't been vulnerable until then. I haven't really done that. Like I suck at that. So like I know in a relationship, like man, like I need to do that more. Um, because I had to look at that. And I had to look at like in order for me to change my perspective on situations and like I need to look at like where do I falter? Because my ego will creep in and tell me like I'm good. It's everybody else's fault. And like no, sometimes things happen to me because like I do cause it. Like I'm a good tornado, right? Like I'll fuck shit up just because sometimes, right? And like I always joke with people and be like, yeah, I'll just burn the house down for something to do, right? Because I live in a glass house and throw stones, and like that's not really okay, right? But like I have to look at like, man, where did I go wrong? What did I do to cause these situations? And if I didn't cause this situation, and that's where like the shadow work comes in, right? Is
Hmm.
like if I didn't cause this situation, then okay, man, it is what it is. Like you just it is what it is, right? But if I did cause this situation, well, I need to change that part about myself because if I move into a different situation that's similar, I'm gonna do the same shit over and over again. You know what I mean? And I don't know. And I guess that's kind of where I look at it at.
Yeah, and no, I agree with that perspective too, in a way, but I like to look at the situation as a whole. Okay, so yes, there's definitely room for self-reflection in any situation like that we go through, whether it be a breakup or, we quit talking to a friend or, a family member, you know, may not want to be around us or something. Any kind of interaction like that that turns negative, um, I have to look at what I could have done wrong. And that's fine. I believe in very heavily in self reflection. I'm always questioning, okay, could I have done this better? Did I say something wrong that could have pushed this person away? But in the bigger scheme of things, I realize that there are a lot of people that are put in our life only for seasons, and they're to come and go to show us things about ourselves that we wouldn't be able to see on our own. So I guess that's where that acceptance comes when I go through a breakup. I can step back and say, okay, Andrew, what did you do wrong? She broke up with you. What could you have possibly done different? Well, I was kind of focused on work at this point, and I probably could have given her more time. I could have showed more emotion towards her because, there's been times in my past where it was hard for me to show emotion to someone that I was dating because I was afraid that too much emotion would push them away.
Mm.
So I mean, there's things like that that I've self-reflected about over the years, and I've come to some realizations that I need to alter some things within me to have a healthy and happy relationship. But at the same time, I could have never learned those things without being in these relationships and having to break up with them and then move on with my life. Every negative situation shows us something about ourselves that we needed to see. And so I just kind of try to put that positive spin on it, put a positive perspective on a situation like that. Not everyone's meant to stay. Those people that come in our lives are only meant to teach us something that we wouldn't learn without them. And that's something that I've gained from doing that shadow work and looking at myself, and having people call me out and say, "Hey, why did you do that?" I've had exes that have called me out in relationships, "Why did you do that?" And I really sat back and said, why did I do that? What made me think that that was okay in a relationship? You know, I have to look at their perspective on the way that I treated them and question it. What
Mm.
are they seeing that I don't? And that's like understanding everybody as a whole and how everybody has different perspectives that may not, you know, correlate with mine. And that's okay because we need those different perspectives to try to understand some things that we may not see within ourselves. I know me personally, when I was out there using and everything, I didn't care about anyone else's perspective except for my own. Mine was right, and even if I thought that yours may have been right, I didn't want to hear it because it questioned who
Yeah.
I was. And I already knew I was a mess and I didn't want to work on myself. So I didn't want to hear you tell me how much of a mess I was. Like, what? No, 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 we're not talking about that, you know? And then we got to flip it on them and make them sound like the bad guy because we weren't okay with their perspective. It made us feel uncomfortable. It made us feel uneasy, you know? But today, I love it, you know? You know, the big boss, you know, at the company I work for, you know, he pulled me into his office the other day and, you know, we had a conversation the day before about little miscommunication and, you know, something that I should have done that I didn't do. And he pulled me into his office the next day and, you know, he's like, hey, I just may want to apologize for the way I handled that. He said, you know, I was a little more direct than I feel I should have been. And I said, hold up. I said, I appreciate that, but I think that you handled that perfectly fine. I said, I appreciate that constructive criticism. Let me know when I'm doing something wrong.
Mm.
I'll sit back and reflect about it, and I'll try to do it better the next time. And I said, one thing I've learned over the years is I know very little about things. I'm here to learn. You know, I'm a student before anything else. You know, teach me how to be better because I don't know. And that's so far away from where I used to be, you know? And just having that different perspective on situations has really helped me grow over the years. Understanding that my perspective and the way I handle a situation isn't always right. Everything that I do and go through is a teachable moment by someone else that may know more than me. You know, so that's why I told him, I said, no, you know, I appreciate the way that you handled that. You know, I other people may not have, but I did. You know, I said, I don't know everything. And he's like, yeah, I'm the same way. And I think that really resonated with him. You know, he's like, wow, this guy is really ready to learn. You know, he isn't someone that just thinks that he knows everything. And so, you know, that me having that perspective in that situation may just open up, you know, doors for me in the future.
You know what? You know what I've recently been thinking.
What's that?
So, so my perception on trust, right?
Mm,
Because I've always been like, man, I got trust issues. No, I don't. That's not real, right? Trust issues aren't real, right? Not at all. Like if you really break it down, right? I trust. Well, I trust just about everybody, right? Like when I go out to dinner, I trust that the people touching my food are gonna, you know, not put eye drops in it, and I'm gonna shit everywhere, right?
does that really work?
I don't know. I saw it on a movie one time,
Yeah.
but saw it on a movie. But like I trust that, right? I trust when I trust like my neighbor's not gonna burn my house down, you know, downstairs. I trust it, that my neighbor ain't gonna just light up the place and burn it down with me in it. Um, so like at the end of the day, like when it's me dealing with people, right? Like what am I really afraid of is what I have to look at, right? Well, I trust. Like I don't care about a physical, right? Like you're gonna physically hurt me? Like I don't care, right? Like I'll get over it. So I don't care about that, right? But it's the emotional hurt that I'm worried about, right? So that's where the trust issue lies. Is like I'm worried that if I tell you these things, you can use them against me to hurt me, right? Well, that's not real either. Like if like I was saying, like man, like you gotta take the mask off, right? So like if I take masks off and I say, nah, fuck it, like this is who I am, this is who I was, this is where I was at, like this is where I am now. I've removed these masks, I've thrown all my shit out there. You can't hurt me no more. Not emotionally, not mentally, nothing, right? So that makes me now not have these trust issues when I allow new people into my life, right? It's I don't have to worry about this no more. And like doesn't matter because like I'm throwing my shit out there. The only thing I have to do is like maybe retell the story because you're telling it wrong, right? and it's kind of like Eminem at the end of 8 Mile, right? In that movie, like he just says all this shit, and he's like, "Now go tell people something they don't know about me." And the guy couldn't, right? He put the mic down and just left. The same thing in real life. So like the trust issues aren't real, right? Same way with loyalty, right? I see this all the time too. Like, oh, these people ain't loyal. Well, no, because now we're looking at our definitions, our perception, and like what you think it is versus what I think it is are two different things. The the accountability that I hold myself to, two different things, right? Like I look at like, all right, so if I have a friend that had a girlfriend, right? I don't care if it's 10 years from now. I'm not gonna sleep with her. Right? Like I'm good. Like this girl could show up at the house butt ass naked, come in the house, be like, "Hey, it's me." I'm be like, "Get the hell out!" Right? Because at the end of the day, I never know what two people are thinking behind closed doors. So like, it's just that's off limits. I'll never do that again. Never. Right?
Again.
Well, there was one time I did that. Right? Well, you know about that. But like I would never like I'm never gonna put myself in that situation. Like I'm never gonna do that. But I can't hold my friends to that standard, right? So like my perception of that is this is what I feel it is. So like that doesn't mean that they do, right? Or vice versa. Like I've had friends that, have been like, oh, I slept with your ex. I don't care personally, but I would never do that. So like I can't hold you to them same standards or that same expectation, right? So like definitions are different, right? That's where perception lies. Is definitions, right? Is
Hmm.
like
I like
my
that.
my definition of this is different than the definition of that. So like the way you see something is totally different than the way like I see something versus the way like these people see something, right? I say these people because I don't know who's all watching personally, right? But like, so like the way that I do things in life, I can't expect other people to do them the same way that I would, right? So like that's where perception lies for me is like, what's the definition? There is none because the way I see it, totally different than somebody else, right? So that's where taking shit personal comes in, right? Is because I have to let go of those expectations too,
Hmm.
right? Because those expectations of, oh, this person's doing this and that against me, man, they ain't real. Like, shut up. Like, no, that's not real. Like, the fact of the matter is like, my definition is different than that person's definition. It doesn't make them any less people, right? It just makes it like, it's messed up. Like, we talk about the girl that cheated on me, right? She's probably the most loyal girlfriend I've ever had. And she cheated on me. And people get blown away by when I say that. And like I say that because again, I have to look at my part in it, right? I started neglecting her. I didn't want to touch, like, you know what I mean? Like I talked about it on a previous episode. So go back and watch. But, so like my actions cause these reactions. But before that situation, she was probably the most loyal person I've ever been with, ever that I've ever dated, right? And even after that situation, like we had talked about it, and she was like, maybe we could. I was like I don't want to work it out. Like there's nothing to work out because my boundary was crossed, and once my boundary's crossed, I'm out. You cross a boundary of mine, I'm out. Like
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Because boundaries are very important to me. So yeah, man, like talking about this is what it reminds me of. Like these are just thoughts that are randomly just popping everywhere in my head, right? ADHD. But yeah, man, it's all about definitions. Like how do you define it versus how I define it? And in all reality, ain't none of us gonna be on the same like we might be in the same book, but we're not gonna be on the same page.
Hmm.
Right? So it doesn't fucking matter at the end of the day. If I let go of my expectations of like, man, this ain't personal out here. You know what I mean? I always tell people like, man, half the time I have to try to remember it's always business and never personal with people. And like you're right.
All right, Nino.
You're right.
Nino Brown.
You're right though. People come and go out of our life, right? And like that sucks. But sometimes it's for the better. And sometimes it's not, right? But sometimes it is. And sometimes I leave people's lives, and that's probably better. Sometimes maybe not, right? Because I say all the time, like sometimes I was toxic, sometimes I wasn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You know what I mean, love.
and like you brought up a few different good things. Just like having them different definitions of trust and loyalty, and especially when you hit on having these expectations for how people are supposed to act in our lives. That's just our perception of who we think they are and who we want them to be in our lives. And those are all great subjects that we can definitely talk about in other podcasts, because I mean we can both hit a lot of
We're
good
talking
points
about
on
them
it.
now.
But like one thing I really want to that really struck with me and I want to hit on real quick is just trying to understand. When we're trying to understand other people's perspectives and situations, I realize that the reality that I'm living right now in this body is completely different from the reality that you're living. You
Absolutely.
perceive things different than me. You feel emotions different than me. I don't even know if we see the same color. Like what is this? Is that green? Like you got
That's
to
blue to me.
understand to me though, but what is green? In my mind, green can be red to you. It could be what you see. And so that's what your reality perceives. So with
Yeah, that's a
me
good point.
with me trying to understand that everybody sees things differently, it really helps me to understand that I may not always be right, and that everybody else is going to have a different perspective on a situation, and that's okay too. And I think that if we share that and we help other people and help ourselves to see that, you know, we may all have different perspectives on things, but that doesn't mean that either of them are wrong,
Mhm.
you know? And it's just trying to understand and come together, and that brings me to the oneness of the universe and how we are all the same. We are all living similar lives, just with different perspectives. So, you know, episode 8, we're probably going to hit on a lot more things, and we really want to get into the healing of what we're talking about more, but there's so many situations in life that can change just by looking at a different perspective on it or understanding someone else's perspective on it. So we appreciate you all so much for checking us out. Our numbers are like skyrocketing. What was it like last week or week and a half ago? They jumped up. Our subscribers jumped up. So please like, share, and subscribe.